Good morning. Call to order the November 28th, 2023 meeting of the Saline County Board of Commissioners. I would ask that the clerk please call the roll.
Commissioner Shadwick, Commissioner Vidrickson,
Here.
Commissioner Sparks,
Here.
Commissioner Weiss,
Here.
Commissioner Hay.
Here.
I ask that you please stand and join me in a flag salute followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We now move to the public forum portion of our meeting where citizens may speak on county government and pertaining to items that are not on today's agenda and limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who wishes to address the commission? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for approval of today's consent agenda. And the consent agenda consists of approval of tax roll adjustments, approval of accounts payable, approval of the public forum agenda, approval of the community comment letter regarding essential air service proposals, and approval of the Justice Assistance Grant assurances. Are there any commissioners who wish to have anything pulled for further discussion? If not, I would take a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve today's consent agenda. All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. We will move forward to our action items for today. Item number 1.
Consent to City of Salina Industrial Revenue Bonds with Philip Smith Haynes, County Administrator.
Good morning, Phil.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. As your Commission is well aware, the City of Salina has been working feverishly for the last probably close to 2 years now to attract additional multifamily housing to the city, and we have been sort of working cooperatively with them. We pledged up to $1 million of our ARPA funding to help them with that. That did receive confirmation right before Thanksgiving that their developer is not planning to use that money. They also received $25 million from the state of Kansas. And they have finally entered into a development agreement with a developer to get the first phase of that multifamily housing out of the ground. In order to do that, they are proposing to issue industrial revenue bonds. Their development agreement calls for them to issue bonds within 45 days of the closing date, which I believe was November 17th. And so that essentially is January 1 that they have to issue the bonds. But there's a little kink. The property that they are planning to put those multifamily units on happens to be in the donut hole there on Magnolia, just west of the Menards property. So that's actually in unincorporated county. The city has started the process of annexing the land, but they don't feel that the land will, the annexation will be complete by the time they have to issue the bonds. So they have requested us to consent to their issuance of bonds for property that's currently in the unincorporated area. We've done this once before. We did this with the Kubota property down on South 9th Street. It was the same situation where it was just a timing issue. The city did ultimately end up annexing that property, but they didn't have it annexed at the time that they wanted to issue the bonds. So this resolution, like the prior one, has been prepared by Gilmore and Bell. It has also been reviewed by Mike Montoya, and staff would recommend approval. Assistant City Manager Sean Hennessy is in attendance as well if the commission has any other questions.
Well, I have one question. For over 2 years, you mentioned that this has been going on and that property has been recognized as the potential. Why does the annexing of this property taken so long, and that it seems like being more proactive, that should have been done early on, and we wouldn't have this here?
Yeah, well, I'll ask Sean to come forward, and he can probably address that more than I can. But I will say this was the property. You're correct, Commissioner Weiss. This was one of the properties that was identified as a potential site, but I don't think that they knew which of multiple properties it was going to be until relatively recently. So, Sean.
And that's correct.
And please state your name, Sean.
I'm sorry. Sean Hennessy, Assistant City Manager, City of Salina. When we initiated the RFP process, we received literally a smorgasbord of different proposals. This was a different situation. Typically what you have in these is you have one piece of property that you want to develop, and then you solicit an RFP for the development of this particular property. In this case, what we did was we opened it up and said, give us your ideas on where you would like to put this multifamily housing in. So we went through that process. The developer, while this piece of property was one of the locations they had identified, it was one of many. So it wasn't until relatively recently that we knew that this is where they wanted to put in the development for this property. And we also have been waiting because we've been negotiating. When Phil said feverishly, I kind of laughed a little bit because it has been a long process to get the DA in place. And we wanted to have that DA in place. Both the developer wanted and the city wants that because then that has those mutual commitments within the DA. Once that DA was signed, which was literally just a few weeks ago, that's when we really initiated this process because then both sides had those commitments in the DA, which we did not have before. Before the DA was signed, we had no commitments from the developer, and the developer had no commitments from the city.
You know, I see this situation being the exact opposite of what we have over on East Schilling Road, where both sides of the county road are within the city limits, but the road is not. In Magnolia, the city has the road, and both sides of the road are county. Somewhere or another, the county and the city need to get their heads together and get that all-inclusive so that we aren't begging each other one way or the other for these things. The next commission or the next meeting or whatever, this needs to happen behind the scenes and get it out in front of the commissioners and get to where we're not jumping over these hurdles, I think. So, any other comments? Or
Sean, I got a couple of questions for you. We're talking about that land over there, and I guess first one, I'll ask Phil about how much sales tax are we currently receiving on that little piece of land. And I did have it looked up this morning, and I believe it's $298 a year is what we're receiving in taxes on that.
Well, that would be property tax. You asked me about sales tax. I would say sales tax would be zero because it's currently an ag field, but yes.
And then, Sean, on the IRBs, they're looking at a 10-year abatement on that property tax. When does that 10-year take effect? If this is going to be in phases, do all phases have to be completed before the 10 years starts, or does this start from day one when we?
So there are going to be two phases to this project. The first phase is 250 solely apartments, 1 and 2 bedroom. That's what this is only applying for. So once these are initialized and put in place, then that 10-year clock starts to run. As a separate process, there will be potentially separate IRBs for phase 2. Phase 2 is not, we're not intending it to be just another 250 apartments. We are starting that process. It's like deja vu all over again to have an updated development agreement for that. That will be a much more diverse mixture of housing types. We don't know exactly what that is, but that will be a distinct process between phase 1 and phase 2.
Okay. And then, what guarantee do we have? Okay, if we're looking at a 10-year event, what guarantee do we have that the rent on these units are going to be, it's supposed to be for lower income, lower rent. What guarantee do we have on these in that length of time?
Well, a couple things. First of all, to be clear, we originally intended these to be market rate. They're not income based. However, in the DA, there is a rent cap. It is subject to what's called a CPI inflator. And the rent caps are, it starts at $800 for one bedroom, $950 for a two bedroom. However, that is subject to a CPI inflator for then 4 years. And that's 4 years from substantial completion, which is a big difference from just the initialization of construction. So following substantial completion, those rent caps will be in place for 4 years. It's $800, $950, subject to that CPI inflator. And then there is also a clause that says if for some reason their loan to debt ratio goes way too high, they can raise the rent also there, although I find that to be very unlikely considering the amount of the grant and the potential IRBs, which we're discussing today. So that's where we have. And there will be a restriction on the rent subject to those CPI inflator clauses. It won't be for the life of the property, but it will be for 4 years following substantial completion.
Okay, and then the tax break we're giving on the building materials, does that mean that they'll buy their local, everything would be bought local, that we're giving a tax break on the local businesses getting the business for the?
We strongly prefer, however, we do not mandate, just because of the difficulties in this. If we were to mandate, there's a wide variety of different materials that may be needed. They may need to go them out. We've been very clear with the developer that we strongly prefer that they spend the money locally. However, we also realize that it's going to be very difficult to mandate that. And so it is not mandated in the DA, although we believe that most of it will be spent locally. We just don't feel that with the wide variety of materials that are needed and where they're going to have to be sourced from, we cannot mandate that.
Okay. You know, I hear from people all the time, you know, we want to see Saline County grow, we want to see Salina grow, but, you know, we can't do it without housing. I mean, we got to have the housing. We can't, you know, if we don't have the housing, people ain't going to come and go. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have another question, if I might. In the RFA, it doesn't mention how much land is being annexed, I don't believe.
It is the entire parcel. The entire parcel is kind of a bizarre shaped. It's the parcel behind, not directly behind Menards, but a little bit to the north, just south of Magnolia. It is 40 acres roughly for the entire parcel. It's 40 and some change. However, this development for phase one is only on approximately 12 acres located within that parcel. Phase two is intended, the goal, I will say, for phase two is to place it all within that parcel. However, due to the shape of the parcel, floodways, flood zones, other constraints, there's not a guarantee that they'll be able to fit phase two all in this parcel, but that is the goal for the developer, is to fit all of it on that parcel.
I guess the reason for the question was to follow up on what the chair mentioned, and why don't we use this opportunity to clean up that donut and have the city annex all of that into the city at this point?
I am more than willing to bring that to the city manager to have that for a discussion. If the county is very interested in that, I can certainly have that discussion with the city manager. I so far have not had any discussions with the city manager or the city commission, but I would certainly be more than willing to initiate that discussion.
I don't think there's any question that that's going to be developed on down the road.
Sure.
So, I mean, why can't we do it all in one step instead of
Certainly.
one step at a time? This brings me to another question that I had for later, but it would really be helpful on these situations if we had a map.
Sure.
I'm still confused. Are we talking about the property that's north of Menards between the interstate and the hotel, or is it west of the hotel?
It is west of the hotel.
Okay, so I don't.
And
All the while, I felt like it was the other piece of
Sure.
property that was.
I will provide, actually, I will send a map to Phil, and he'll be able to disseminate all that to you. I have produced maps for that, and I'd be more than happy to share that map and all the additional information that the city commission looked at last night. I will send all of that to Phil, and he can forward that all to you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's really my fault. Sean actually provided me a map, and I just didn't want to clutter up the packet. This is,
I get it.
we didn't have a map when we did it before for the Kubota property, and so I just felt like I would do it as cleanly as possible. But I have that map, and I can certainly get it to you. It is basically between, so there's the home loan bank there on the corner, and the Menards property. It sort of goes around that over to that creek bed. So that's when Sean refers to it as an irregularly shaped parcel. It's that sort of long sliver over to the creek bed.
Well, I see no reason for us to be stand in the way, but I do have a devil's advocate question. What if this doesn't get annexed and we've approved this industrial revenue bond? Is that something I should worry about? Not worry about?
I would say you shouldn't worry about that too much, because the city of Salina has a really strong interest in completing the annexation, because they have an agreement with the state of Kansas for $25 million for the grant for developing that property. So I think I wouldn't worry too much about them not annexing.
That is something that has escaped us right there at $25 million. So,
I have another
And
quick
this will
question.
be utilizing half of that. The other half will be used for phase 2 of that grant.
go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, a quick question. You said earlier about multiple areas that would like to be annexed. I mean, is the city, and this goes back to the timing question of why this is happening, in those multiple areas, what's the negative side of where the city doesn't try and get all that annexed before the thing instead of waiting till this point?
Sure. Well, when I refer to multiple areas, many, if not most of those, were located within the city. Well, there were some others that were outside of the city. Again, it was just an open solicitation, so it depended upon where the developers really were interested in placing the housing. And we really didn't proceed with the annexation until we really had this DA in place.
And I guess that's my question is that why doesn't the city get all those different areas annexed, and then that way it's already all done?
So,
I mean,
So I think we've all sort of driven down the highway and seen those towns in, Texas or wherever, where you see the city limit sign and then 10 miles later you see an actual town. So the state of Kansas has adopted a policy statutorily where they've really restricted annexation. Annexation in Kansas used to be fairly open, but as with many things, Johnson County spoiled it for the rest of us. So Lenexa and Overland Park and Olathe got into annexation wars back in the 80s. Trying to grab land that they felt would be useful for future development. And so as a consequence of that, the legislature came back in and really restricted the ability of cities to annex unless there's a sort of a specific purpose or consent, et cetera. So in this case, it's probably a consent annexation because the developer owns the land and can consent to the annexation. But generally speaking, cities are fairly restricted from just going out and grabbing large tracts of land.
thank you. That answered that.
And in many jurisdictions and states, you also not only you also have to be able to make sure you provide those services and everything like that. You have to have the ability to extend those utilities already and everything else. This was done specifically with the intent that Phil just mentioned, just so you don't go out and try to, well, I'm afraid it was in Missouri, but, Blue Springs and Lee Summit were constantly at loggerheads trying to get land from one another, but yet they couldn't extend the services because they didn't have the development going in. So that's one of the reasons why the restrictions have gone in place.
Thank you.
Thank you for today's lesson.
Thank you.
That was very informative. Thank you,
Yes.
Sean.
Thanks.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mr. Chair, I move we adopt Resolution 23-2390 as presented.
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 23-2390 as presented. Is there any further discussion? All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Sean. Thank you. We'll move to item number 2.
Bid award for 2023 aggregate shouldering with Justin Mater, County Engineer.
Good morning, Justin.
Good morning, Commissioners. So I'm here to request that we award the bid for 2023 aggregate shoulder construction. We opened bids on November 21st at 11 a.m. and we received one bid from APAC, Kansas. In your packet, you should have a copy of the bid tabs. Only receiving one bid for this project is pretty typical. I think since I've been here since 2019, we've only just received the one bid, and so this is something I was expecting. So also in your packet is a project map of the locations where we're going to shoulder, and so we're going to be shouldering Old 40 from Simpson Road to Solomon, and then on Magnolia Road from Holmes to Kip. So those are the two locations that we're going to be working on. And we put it to where all the work's got to be completed by the end of March of next year. So this type of work is really completed in the wintertime, and we wanted it to leave a big window for the contractor to be able to get this completed. Alternatives for action would be 1, to accept the bid as indicated in the staff recommendation, or 2, reject the bid and direct staff to the wishes of the board. Staff recommends accepting the unit price bid from APAC, Kansas for the amount of estimated work equaling $208,326.55. Funds for this project will be taken out of our contractual asphalt budget line item. And it has a total budget of $2.5 million. But other work that's taken from this line item is our other asphalt maintenance projects. And so that's our overlay, our chip seal, and crack seal. And this with the shouldering, this is just going to be on roads that has not received an overlay. So when we do an overlay, for instance, this year we did Burma Road. That project has not been shouldered yet, but it will be with that contract. And so this is on other roads. The budget line item currently has a balance of $1,150,000 and some change. And so that's still fairly high because I think there's some payments that hasn't gone through our system yet for the asphalt work out on Burma, as well as the crack sealers have not completed their work yet. And so that's why that number is fairly high at this point in time of the year.
So Justin, there are 2 different budget line items involved here?
No, there's just the one. There's just our contractual asphalt work line item, which is in our budget.
Which is the 2.5 million?
Yes.
I guess I'm just not following this
They've
very well.
already spent $1,350,000 of it.
Okay.
Yes, because that's our chip seal. Some of the asphalt work, like I said, some of that hasn't gone through our system yet for the work out on Burma.
I'm assuming these aggregate shoulders are similar to what we've done here in the last year or two
Yes.
in the rural roads.
Yes.
And believe me, they do make a difference.
Yes.
We've had some pretty good shoulder drop-offs along Simpson and Country Club and several other roads. So it is a big improvement, and I think it's something for safety's sake that we need to do. So
And something to keep the cost of the project as low as possible is we do allow the contractor to use millings, and that's typically what they do. APAC's got a mountain of millings out on their yard. And so they'll use that material to mill. And usually it's so, also when we're shouldering, we're looking at that color contrast, okay? So when they put down new asphalt, you've got this nice black surface. Well, I don't want them to use black millings because then it's hard to tell at night, where that shoulder is, and so they have to use rock. Where here, most of these roads have been chip sealed, so it's got that kind of tan look, and so using millings, a black material for the shoulder, you still get that color contrast.
Further questions or comments from commissioners?
A couple questions. How far off are these roads from being resurfaced, having
With
overlay?
Overlay, they're a ways down the road. Old 40, we did overlays. We've overlaid that entire road, in, I think 3 different projects since I've been here. So this section here, I think it was 2 different contracts that we overlaid. I would say 3 years ago.
Okay, so this is more of a maintenance, the
Yes.
shoulders have either eroded or packed or whatever? And
Right, yes, yeah. And a lot of times, we'll wait till the end of the year because of all the activity on our roads. And it's really, the spray rigs are really detrimental. They're fairly wide and they move over and they have that, real skinny tire that drives right there on the shoulder. So that's just to take care of that drop off.
And one last question. You mentioned that you had some projects that are not completed yet. Farley Road, that grouting or the cutting out of the cracks and patching, has that been done?
That has not been done yet.
Wasn't that this fall project?
Yes. So, and we've had a meeting with the contractor, who's really our crack seal contractor. He got they actually do that type of work where because the plan was to cut the cracks out and to put in an asphalt strip through there. Was it last? I think it was last week, Tuesday. We had a meeting with that contractor, and he has some concerns about the scope of that work, and from his experience. So something is making those cracks open up really wide. We're talking like 2 inches. And so he's had numerous projects where the project owners hired him to come in there and mill out a strip and put in asphalt. And then the road still opens up still. So now instead of 1 big crack, you've got 2 pretty good sized cracks on both sides of that patch. And he had some really big concerns about that. And that's when we had a very lengthy conversation about that. And so something that we're going to go back and do instead of having milling that out, we're going to go back and put in mastic. It's a heavier material, crack seal material in those locations, and so there's going to be a change order. It's actually going to be a significantly reduced cost in that, and to see if that'll help. We're both very confused on why those cracks are opening up that big, because there's geogrid, which is kind of like a snow fence, below that asphalt. And that should mitigate some of that cracks that's coming up from the clay material below the road, because that's usually what causes the cracks. But it's happening because it's pretty obvious it's out there. So we're still working on that, as well as other crack seal projects in the county. They were going to start this week, probably with the snow. It'll probably be next week when they get started on this.
Okay, anyone else? Is there any public comment regarding this request? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission for action, please.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve RFA 2023-222 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve RFA 2023-222. Further comments? All of those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
We will move to the informational items, and item number 1.
Road and Bridge Departmental Update with Darren Fischel, Road and Bridge Administrator.
Good morning, Darren.
Good morning, Commissioners. Like she said, this is our bi-monthly update for September and October. One of the things that we had at our facility was an LTAP training class for snow and ice control. The LTAP class is administered through KU, and it also included surrounding county employees. We had forklift training for all of our employees. We did do snow preparation for the plow trucks and for snow, which we needed last weekend. We had trash pickups countywide. We replaced 7 different culverts, or 16 different culverts, excuse me. This is on Cloud Street, east of Donmeyer. This is on Sudgren Road, west of Centennial. There's a box culvert there and a waterway coming to this box. We put 2 culverts in there just due to where the road's at. These 2 culverts, due to the elevation of the road, 1 culvert wouldn't have been enough. So there's a picture of the outlet for Sundgren Road. And then on Watkins Road, west of Muir, we put in an entrance culvert for an individual. This is Sundgren Road, west of Tyler. That's down south of the bombing range. And we also installed 2 low water crossings. This is Granville and Hannah intersection. There was, when the state closed Shipton Road to replace that bridge, this was the emergency access to Ohio Street for the fire district. There was a small wooden box there that would not withstand the weight of the fire trucks. So we put this metal culvert in there during the construction of the bridge on Shipton. And then we removed that after the bridge was built and just created a low water crossing. This is on Cunningham, south of Rose Hill. This is a semi-low water crossing. There's a creek bed right here and a culvert in the middle of this to vent low flow. And as you can see, this asphalt on the top of here, every time it come over here would chew this up. And it was just an every time it rained hard a maintenance item. So we went in there and removed that, put these concrete Lego blocks on the side as form infill disc with fill sand and compacted soils, and then poured concrete over the top of that 6 to 8 inches in depth. And then we had to do some earthwork here to make the transition. And then you can see the low water crossing at the level of the stream bed. We fixed or repaired 3 box culverts. This is on Simpson Road, south of Ottawa Road. You see here on the picture on the left, the old sheet piling that they used for forms was rotting away and starting to undermine this box. We went in and set some concrete Lego blocks and then poured a new apron that was tied into the blocks and the floor here with rebar. This is Schilling Road east of K40. We went in and cleaned this entrance out, and if you see on the other side there's a concrete head wall. We removed enough of that head wall so it wouldn't be as much of a hazard for a vehicle if it were to strike it. You can see it's been hit by farm equipment over the years. This is on Solomon Road, south of Rose Hill Road. The flooring on this box had beginning to rot. The back wall were in good condition, so we went in and put a new deck floor on it. This material on this floor was salvaged from the bridge closures in 2006. When the county closed all those bridges, we went out and salvaged those, so this is salvaged and recycled material. And we did do some aggregate edge wedge of our own on State Street from the interstate all the way out to Brookville Road. And this was done by our forces because of the location of the pile. A contractor in town had a pile of concrete millings that the county purchased back in March. And we did an edge wedge on that road there. This is a ditch cleaning project on Magnolia west of Powers. This ditch fills in with silt. Whoops. This ditch fills in with silt from time to time, and we have to go out and clean it. There's a box right there. And when it gets like this, the water just tops the road. This is a Under drain placement on Reese Road, right here, we have a spring in the roadway in the side of this hill, actually, and it leaches out into the road. We went in and placed this under drainment so water from this spring could get to here and not impact the roadway. This is just a picture of that. And then we did a rebuild on a section of North Street east of Simpson Road. This right here over here along the tree line is the Smoky Hill River. When the Smoky Hill River would break out, it would flood this road. And then, as you can see, the road is considerably lower than the surrounding properties, and the water would stand on the road. So we went in and created a ditch and elevated this road just a little bit and created this drainage channel on the south side. And then on the north side, we created a ditch for that to get to that culvert. So even though the road may overtop on a serious flood event, there will still be drainage. The water will go down and the road not be impacted so much. This is a project we did with the Kyle Railroad on Old Highway 40 west of Solomon Road. They went in and they replaced these concrete pads between the rails. And then we afterwards placed the asphalt in the rails. The railroad only has about 2 feet of responsibility here beyond these crossing blocks. And so in order to make a good transition, the asphalt really needed to go back farther than that. So we partnered with them to make that a better crossing. We did replace 205 signs or posts. We're still working on the stop sign and advanced warning project. The county-wide striping is complete. At the time I made this, it said 60%, but we are done with the county-wide striping. 1,700 miles of roadway were maintained with the motor graders. Most of the operators are doing their own mowing, and the mowing is finished for the year. This map shows the material haul locations throughout the county for those 2 months. Our trucks hauled 2,530 ton of rock, 1,420 ton of SS3, which is the smaller material, 1,640 ton of AB3, 1,440 ton of sand, 2,730 tons of dirt, and 3,180 tons of crushed concrete. That was for the edge wedge. And so we totally hauled 12,940 ton of material. Our plans are continued with some of the culvert replacement as the weather allows. We have finished the striping, and most of the projects that we had are complete, and we'll be moving on to winter tree work. Our budget line items are falling within the normal operating parameters, with the exception of the contract hauling, which generally overruns every year, and we've made some improvements to that line item in 2024 that the commission approved. That's all I have. If you have any questions.
That's all you have? You didn't do anything other than haul about 250 truckloads of rock and all that stuff? So, well, thanks, Darren. That's quite an impressive report, and your pictures speak volumes of what's going on out in the county as far as the Road and Bridge Department is concerned, and the maintenance of the roads. Thank you very much. Other comments from commissioners?
I just want
Questions?
Oh,
Go ahead.
I just want to say, I appreciate the work that you done on the edging over on Waterwell Road, where when it rained, it washed it all out in the middle of the road, all over the road, where you guys come back and redid that and then swept it off. It worked out well.
Okay,
It
great.
looks
Thank you.
a whole lot better, yeah.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
Anyone else? We'll move to item number 2.
County Administrator's Update with Philip Smith Haynes, County Administrator.
Morning again, Phil.
Good morning, Commissioners. Just 2 items today. First, the county receives some funding for alcohol, sales of alcohol that occur in the county. the state transfers some of that back to us and requires us to spend it on two different particular activities, one being drug and alcohol treatment and another being parks and recreation services. And so we have a process where every other year we accept applications from folks, and then in the past we've had a couple of commissioners volunteer to go through those. The last two cycles it's been Commissioner Weiss and Commissioner Shadwick who've gone through those, looked at them, and then brought them to the full commission for review in January. So I'm just needing a couple volunteers. I don't looking Jim, I'm looking at you again if you would like to do that again.
I'd be more than happy to.
Okay. And then I can certainly contact Monty if he's willing, or if anybody else wants to jump in there.
Monty can't do it, I'll.
Okay. Great. We'll get that set up then, and appreciate that. The second item was just as a reminder. We will not be here next Tuesday because the majority of the commission and many of the staff will be headed down to Wichita for the KAC annual conference. So we will be back here on December 12th for our next regular commission meeting. And that's all I had for this morning.
Any questions or comments?
I have one question. On the alcohol funds, how are entities notified that these funds are becoming available and to get their applications in? Is there a process for that?
There is. So generally what we have done is to notify the organizations that have applied in the past. We also put it out on the county's website. We haven't done a ton of additional outreach on the drug and alcohol treatment side because there's a relatively small number of providers. On the Parks and Rec side, we did reach out to a couple additional folks this year that we thought might be interested, because we do anticipate having just a tiny bit more money there. So I think we did get maybe one new application this year for Parks and Rec. So.
Thank you.
Are the smaller incorporated cities out in the county they're on the same notification list?
Yes, typically Gypsum and Assyria apply every cycle. This year we reached out to Brookville as well, just to make sure they knew the opportunity.
Very good. Anything else? All right. Item number 4.
I think we're on item number 3 for the commissioner's comments.
I thought that's what we were
I
doing
was
there.
questioning, but
Oh, I'm sorry. That
All
was my
right.
mistake.
No, it could be me. We'll
right.
go for commissioner comments then. Let's see what Brett brings. See, I told you, Jamie, we'd already talked. Okay, let's go for number 4.
Okay, announcements.
Same as number 3. Okay. At this time, we're going to recess this meeting. We're going to go to room 311 for the courtroom dedication.
Yes, so staff recommends that we go ahead and recess the meeting. They've scheduled that for 10 o'clock. It's 9:44 right now, so we've got about 16 minutes to make it up the elevator. So,
And sometimes it might take that long. Okay, we are in recess.